Hi, Kurt.
How's it going?
Good.
What are we going to talk about today? Let's talk about sin.
Yeah, I gotta define it.
So, according to Oxford's dictionary, sin is a noun, a plural noun, sins, an immoral act considered to be a transgression against divine law, a sin in the eyes of God. An act regarded as a serious or regrettable fault, offensive, or omission. And
But in that definition, you mentioned specifically against the law. So that's what we want to zero in on. What is Yah's law? What does he say? What are his directions or his instructions? And I would go back to the Ten Commandments. That's our covenant. Are we keeping the covenant or are we breaking the covenant? It's pretty simple that way.
right, so I want to just one more definition, right? This says, what is the true definition of sin? I'll put this on the screen. Sin, moral evil, as considered from a religious standpoint. And this is like a sticky wicket here.
Yeah.
Sin is regarded in Judaism and Christianity as the deliberate and purposeful violation of the will of God. That kind of sounds good and right, but it's not. It's not, because the will of God is in religion flexible.
Yeah, it's
Right.
fluid. Like, how do you nail that one down?
Right. But God himself, Yahuwah, the creator of the universe, is very specific when he gives a command, right? He says do X, and X must be accomplished or you're outside of alignment. It's not. So the first sin is based on what? A statement. Do not eat from this tree.
Yes.
Right? And then they do.
Right.
So now you've sinned.
Yeah, you've gone against those instructions. You had this plumb line, you had this don't cross this line here in the sand, and you went past that.
Now you have the second commandment, right? Which is, I'm not talking about the 10 commandments right this second, but be fruitful and multiply.
Okay.
Is a big deal, right? This isn't a suggestion, right? And then when he wipes out the earth, he tells Noah's sons, repopulate the earth.
Yeah.
Right? So these are commands, and anything against that order is a sin. To not, like people talk in the religious circles about homosexuality, God says don't do it. It's an abomination. Well, why is it an abomination? Be fruitful and multiply, repopulate the earth, make more people.
Yeah.
Oh, and, so I guess maybe we can go through the Ten Commandments again, but I think we could start there. Good.
Yeah. I mean, that's the starting point for sure. And I was just going to mention that right there at Noah as well, they were instructed not to eat the blood. And that was a big deal. Like they made a covenant never to do this. Like it was stated, it was in a covenant, they knew it. And then just after Noah dies, they break that. And it's horrible. Like they just go back to this awful nature that the whole earth was destroyed for. And we could talk about more about covenants too. Like we have Abraham, he's a great example. We're told in Jubilees, this is the guy for you to, have this guy be your example. And so I feel like we hardly know much about Abraham. And if he's our big example, we should know more for sure.
And we have a teaching here on Abraham, father of nations. It's
Yeah,
called,
we've discussed him before, but I mean, there's so much more in Jubilees.
Deuteronomy 13. There's a test. Yehovah's testing you, right?
That's a big test.
Like, don't fail the test. And gosh,
you could look at any temptation as a test. Are you going to keep the commandments or are you going to go away from those? Are you going to break those or are you going to keep them? Like you have a choice on all of them, pretty much.
God has a very specific thing that he wants us to do. Here, fit in this box. I want you to focus on these things. And
if you want to be his people. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's a qualification.
And if you want to be his people, then he's with you. He's hanging out
Yeah.
with you. He's like we read in Ezekiel, or was it was Ezekiel,
Yeah.
that there's a very thin wall between us, man.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about this veil. He's not up there. He's if we're lockstep with him, he's what I think the wall he's referring to is the seen and the unseen, right? The
Okay.
spiritual side and then the physical side. But he's like, I'm right there,
Yeah.
but not if you're not with me.
Right. And I don't think we have a clear enough picture of that reality. Like, what we do really does matter. It qualifies me as his people. I get to be in covenant with Yah Almighty, creator of all things, and think of how powerful his word is. And if that veil is that thin, is incredible to think about.
So everything that we do, not visible to him, he's right there.
Yeah.
You can see it. You know, there's a class of angels called the Watchers, which I don't think it's even in the book of Genesis.
I don't
It
think they're
may,
mentioned.
if you only read the Catholic authorized version of Scripture, then, and the word Catholic means united, the United Church of Rome,
Mm-hmm.
they tell you what's going to be in your book.
Yeah.
Never read the other books that used to be in there, then you don't know. You just don't know,
Yeah.
right? These watchers watch you, and they make a report of us. It's like any organization, there's layers of before you get to the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
And you will make no mistake as the CEO, but he eventually, or he gets to, and maybe it's real time, who knows,
Mm-hmm.
reads these reports. And I'm following Yahuwah, and I'm out here in the nations reporting on giants in the land still.
Mm-hmm.
These people are coming to kill us. Why? Why are we saying that still?
Mm-mm. No, our focus should be on Yah for sure.
So the sin of Israel has always been Yahuwah's not enough.
Yeah. Mix it.
We need more. And until we stop
Yeah.
and say, okay, I'm all in on everything he says, and everything he says alone. Everything else
Yes.
is noise. I don't
Oh my goodness. To
care.
focus on that Yah is your only God is such a relief and such a big deal. Like, you have such an easy target. I only have one God. That's it. His words are enough. What he says is true. He is all powerful, all sovereign. Like, you can go down the list of his attributes to know who he actually is incredible. And again, so different than the story that we've been told.
And it is so hard to try to let go of the way we worshipped in the past. It's really
Absolutely.
hard
It
to not
is.
bring that in. And that
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage to be able to do.
Yeah.
Again, those are giants in the land. You
Right.
can't come back with that report. Right? I'm afraid to believe the creator. I'm afraid to believe the creator. And man, we gotta let it go. We gotta learn to let it go because do what I say.
Yeah. It's super important. It qualifies you as his people.
Not do
It
what I say, do what Yahuwah says. That's what
Yeah,
his
yeah.
message to us is to do what I say.
Yes.
And that comes into the whole fear of Yahuwah thing, like fear your God. Like why? What does that even mean to fear your God? Well,
Being absolute awe.
I think he absolutely 100% when he stamps his name on something, it's going to happen exactly as he says it. My word will not return void. So
Mm-hmm.
if that's the fact, then I better learn everything he said because
Yes.
that's
Because
my
there's
fear
such
of him.
Yeah, there's such power in that. And think of that clarity. You're given such a simple set of guidelines. It's simple. His ways are simple. You don't have to go across the sea to find it. You don't have to go up to heaven to find it. You are given it like in you. It's so simple. And then knowing that you're doing what he says is good and that qualifies you as his people and that I mean it's just a beautiful system. He's created it perfectly.
How many times have you heard from the pulpit or from otherwise, well, let's see what these words say in the Greek or in the
Mm,
Hebrew, or you never see anybody say Latin, but
mhm.
anymore. But yeah, that was a big deal language back in the day.
Sure.
I was like, you can't trust what's said because translation issues. This said, stop it,
Yeah.
let that go, man. Like,
And honestly, you can look at the definitions of English just like you did at the start. Like you get a depth in our own language. You can know more deeply or more fully looking at, okay, specifically, I know what sin means. Specifically, it's going against these commandments. Specifically, you can get to the specifics. And I think as a culture, we've gotten messy of who do you even call your God these days? So I think that's super important to nail down solidly. This is who I'm talking about. This is my God. These are the instructions I'm following. But I don't think it's important to look necessarily in a different language. You're still putting it in English so that you do understand what it says.
right, and definitions all have to do with that picture that word forms in your head,
Hmm.
right, in your mind. Like, how do I think about this thing? Well, I got to put words to it, and then how do
Yeah.
I comfortably explain it to somebody else so
Yeah.
that I I feel that I know it well enough that I can tell you about it. Like, what is sin? Like, you've never heard the word sin before, ever.
Hmm.
But the reality is, every religion in the world has the word sin in it,
Hmm.
right? So you can artificially apply a guideline to sin based on just your system of beliefs.
Yeah. It gets totally messy. When you're talking there, I was thinking about, it's like creatively expressing things. So you're a musician. Think of all the layers in music and that you are, trying to project into that the meaning that you want in your song. Or if I'm a painter, it's all about the color selection and the gradient of color. And, if you're a poet, you're thinking of the words you're using to express it. So just artistically, all the ways that Yah has given us to express who he is, his ways, how to live, how to hopefully encourage people to zero in and actually follow his rules or his words, like to know what he says, who he is. That's a huge deal compared to what we've been told this is who he is. But when you read it yourself and you dig into it and study it yourself, what a depth and just value there is to knowing who he actually is, according to what he says, is so dynamic, I think.
Like we just said, every religion in the world has sin in it.
Yeah.
So, but what does the Creator have for sin? Like, what does He consider sin? We, as His people, have a tendency to continually bring in our traditions
We
into the
do.
mix, and He says even now, and I'm here to tell you, even now, in
Today.
2024, according to the
Yeah,
Gregorian calendar, we
sure.
are continually mixing stuff in
Hmm.
because we cannot let go. And I think this is the biggest sin we can do,
Yeah,
is to not believe him.
yeah,
Like,
for
I
sure.
cannot believe what you say enough to do it. Like,
Hmm.
there's got to be more.
Yeah.
I've got to
And-
do it a different way. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
for sure. When you mentioned Jubilees too, what's really explained in that is Sabbath. You want to be his people, you want his mark on you, you keep Sabbath. And he gives you so many more directions in that chapter of, okay, this is what you don't do, people. Like it's been so vague, and yet in his description in Jubilees too. It's like, no, it's specific. Now that I have those instructions, I can actually do that. And it doesn't make it harder. It's just, it's encouraging to know what the parameters are. Like when it's super vague and muddy, it's kind of hard to know exactly. But when you have those specific instructions, like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. It's so easy now.
It's like you're saying, you're a poet or a writer,
Mhm.
or an artist, or a musician.
Mhm.
The hardest thing about being any of those things is to know
Yeah.
when you're done.
Yeah.
When have you finished? When
Yeah.
have I completed my work so that I can show everybody?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and so Yahuwah gave you that in his wording, right? This is when you've arrived. This is when
Yeah.
you're my people. This is
Yes.
when you can say you're done.
Mhm.
Right now, you're all in. And
Mhm.
we were talking to somebody last night, and they were saying that they just want to be all in, and maybe they'll never get there, but maybe they'll like there are literally things we cannot do
Mhm.
to honor Torah 100%. But every single one of us can keep that covenant,
Yeah.
and that covenant is the marriage proposal. All
Yeah.
that you say do, we will do, and
Mhm.
all that he said do was those 10 commandments. He wrote those with his finger. He
Yes.
stuck them in a special treasure box,
Yeah.
and then they followed Israel through the desert for 40
Yeah.
years, ended up
Yeah.
in a temple. The other stuff comes later.
It
That's
does.
with the people presenting their case between, Moshe saying, "Look, dude, you're not gonna be able to get to all these people, all these complaints, right? You can't rule on everything, so let's set aside the judges, right? That's where
Yeah.
these guys come from,
Sure.
and then that's what ends up in Leviticus. But the first
Mhm.
thing, all that you say do will do, 10 things.
Yeah.
Focus on these 10 things. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay,
And
I got
think
you.
of how simple that is. And all of those you're able to completely. Yeah, there's the ones that say don't do these things and then do these things. But we're able to do all those, which is exciting. I think that's super encouraging to know
Right.
these things I can do. I can enter into this covenant. I can be his people. It is possible. And it's such a relief, and I don't know, it's just energizing to do those things is incredible.
There's a verse where it says to start every single day with reviewing those 10 commandments. Like
Hmm.
when you wake up in the morning, put your feet on the ground, say them over and over and
Yeah,
over again.
that's a great idea.
So
Yeah.
then, if it's on the background on my computer screen, every time I turn,
Yeah.
and I work from home, I'm on my
Yeah.
computer all the time. They're
Yeah.
there. If you're tempted to follow this teacher or this belief or that belief, come back to number one again, right?
Hmm.
Yahuwah is my Elohim who brought my ancestors out of Egypt.
Yeah.
He is the only God. Beside him, there is no other. And then
Hmm.
anything else that goes against that is now a sin. And I have to ignore it.
Hmm.
Filter it out. I get it.
And the benefit of reading Jubilees too is that as Israel, if you are Yah's people, he says that it's like he invites you. He's First of all, he's the entity over Israel. He's the leader of Israel. There are other entities over the other nations. But then as one of those benefits of being his people is that he forgives your sins. Like as we if we do stumble in our year, we're given that one day, the Day of Atonement, to ask for forgiveness and that he's faithful to forgive. And I think that's a huge benefit of being his people for sure.
You know what Occam's razor is?
Yeah.
When you strip away everything else, the simplest explanation is usually the right one. And
Mm,
that just holds true with Yahuwah. Like,
yeah.
I've known some incredibly dumb people in my life, and everybody has to be able to get this. Like,
Yeah.
it can't be excluded from anybody, or he's an unfair God, and he's just
Right.
not.
And it is so simple. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's so simple and it's possible and you can. Like that's that's the beauty of it.
Like, if that's the takeaway from this video, what is sin? We've
Mhm.
defined sin. It's not doing what Yahuwah said to do.
Yeah.
Specifically, because we said, I will, I do. We
Yeah.
said that at the base of that mountain so many centuries ago. So we're still held accountable for that. So then
Yeah,
what did
we
we
are.
say I do to? I go back and read it. It's not going to benefit you for me to read it to you. Go read it yourself.
Yeah.
Wake up every day, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. This is my covenant. This is what I said I would do. Whether you signed up for it or not, you're signed up for it. Because
Hmm. And Solomon tells us doing Yah's ways or keeping his commandments is what being human is all about. I mean, that's in Ecclesiastes. So you want to be his people, please do his stuff.